What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks on a recap Monday. DJ, Bucky, Rhett with you. Buck, where's your location right now, by the way? Because I know what your house looks like, and I know what your setup in Jacksonville looks like, and that is neither.
I am in Philadelphia because the game was flex, not a Sunday night game, but it was moved up, but I couldn't get out, so I had to stay the night, and so I'm leaving momentarily.
Are you in the airport right now?
I'm in an airport Marriott.
Oh, nice. That's where I stayed for. I've logged a lot of time in that airport Marriott. A very nice lounge, by the way. I want to say it's up top. It's not down below. It's up top. You got a great lounge. Yeah, good spot. Rhett, good to see you, buddy. Let's jump into the news here. I don't want to talk about the Hoosiers anymore. They won.
That's fine. All right.
It's just not even fun anymore. There's some news I want to get to before we get to the games.
Yeah.
No kidding. Dennis Allen let go with the Saints. They decide they've lost 7 games in a row, and this isn't working. And this is a team that has a whole host of issues. We can talk about salary cap. We can talk about the situation there at the quarterback position, Buck. A lot of different directions you can go here. But you lose to the Carolina Panthers by 1 point, but a Carolina Panther team that is very much in the rebuild mode, and you're a veteran team with a lot of financial commitments. I think that was the final straw.
Yeah, it was the final straw. It's interesting hearing the reports coming out of there about how Gail Benson had kind of been doing some research the last couple of weeks, talking to players, talking to people around the building, trying to figure out what was going on with the team. And then it kind of culminates in the Saints losing to the Panthers, and then he's fired shortly thereafter. I would say, look, the Saints were bound to have a regression based on the way that they were using the credit card. You know, the way that they were using salary caps and pushing everything out into the future. They never really did a full reset. And look, some of this is Dennis Allen, some of this is their organizational philosophy, but they never took the time after all of those years of kind of gunning for a Super Bowl in Drew Brees' twilight. They never did a reset. They never fully restocked the cupboard with young players that eventually became their blue chip players that led them out of kind of that salary cap purgatory.
Boy, I just felt like this was flawed from the start. Like, I just don't know that. I get it for continuity's sake, and that maybe the timing of when Sean Payton stepped away, that this just kind of made the most sense at the time to try to get the most out of this roster and out of, some of the progress that you had made, with the tail end of the Sean Payton era, and to kind of keep that continuity. But I just never felt like this team played with that same type of energy that you saw when Sean Payton was there, that they played with the same type of togetherness, the same type of connectedness and inspiration. Was there ever a great command of this team and of this franchise from Dennis Allen? And again, it's hard to step in and replace a guy that is the most beloved head coach in your franchise's history, that had brought your team the only Super Bowl in your franchise's history. And I just felt like, watching some of the players, right? Watching some of the development of some of the players, watching some of the fall off from some of these players, probably more important to note. And then that kind of the last straw, watching Cam Jordan was so frustrated. He didn't even want to go into the locker room at the end of the game, was essentially walking out of the stadium. Had to go be, the most veteran guy on that team, like the guy that's most synonymous with the Saints, Cam Jordan, like couldn't even bear it at the end of that game against the Carolina Panthers. So certainly understand where the Saints felt like they had to make a move. But like when you look at the Saints at the bottom of the NFC and you look at the top of the NFC with the Detroit Lions, I don't know that you could have a bigger gap or be on more opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of a connectedness with team, with players, and with head coach, right? And I think that kind of puts it in perspective a little bit, considering where the Lions came from and considering where the Saints came from. And I just don't feel like there was enough juice with this team over the last couple of years, and the move had to be made.
So, Rhett, you know this team very well, having grown up there. I want to say Dan Campbell spent some time in New Orleans. I want to say a guy by the name of Aaron Glenn, who's with Dan Campbell in Detroit. Pretty well thought of, pretty well beloved. And I'll swing this over to Buck on this. If we're looking forward and looking at what this is going to be, let's call it what it is. This is going to be 2 years of swamp, to put it in a word that would resonate there.
Very apropos.
It's going to be a swamp for a couple years. They're going to be bad, and unfortunately, the way this league is right now, there's not, it's not just company of one or two teams that are in this boat. There's 7, 8, 9 teams right now that are just as bad as the Saints are. So you've got to find out somebody who can be the best of the bad. Like, we'll worry about championships down the road. I know they've won a Super Bowl in the past, but we got to take this time here where we're going to have assets in terms of the draft, and we have to nail this. And I think that is going to be huge, and it's not just the drafting. And I actually like a lot of the pieces they have in place in their personnel department, led by Jeff Ireland, in terms of going out and finding players. They need to get people in there that can develop these players, and that's why Aaron Glenn is a name that makes a lot of sense to me. And be patient with him. No, this is going to be a few years before this gets back to where you want it to be.
Yeah, now, I think this is interesting because there are going to be a lot of teams that look at a Detroit rebuild and how this team is functioning and try and go there. And also because of the experience that those guys had to go through. Did Dan Campbell start at 0-10 to start his Detroit tenure? 1-10.
Yeah, it was a bunch. Yeah,
pretty.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty, but yet they dug themselves out of there. And then, in terms of Aaron Glenn, the struggles that they had defensively early, but Dan Campbell stuck with him. He was able to kind of figure it out. He went from being a man-heavy guy to a zone guy to back to a man guy. So he's shown some adaptability. We know he has the edge and the fire. It will be interesting to see if they do it, because he does know the building. He understands the lay of the land. And I think where they are, typically you go completely different than that. But I will say this: Aaron Glenn and Dennis Allen were teammates at Texas A&M. There's a friendship there. It'll just be a little, not dicey, but it'll just be a little
yucky that stuff happens. If he has to take over his first buddy. It's a small league.
I'm just saying it's one of those things that you have to talk about.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, but it'll be interesting to see which direction they do go. Hats off to the Panthers, by the way. I want to give them their love. It's a good win for them. Bryce Young did some nice things. I actually watched this game back to back, and we'll get to the Miami game here a little bit later on. But I watched those games back to back, and I just remember thinking, okay, if Carolina's going to move on, I do think the Miami would be a great spot for Bryce to go, because Tua obviously has had injuries, he's missed time. And he's just that's the type of quarterback that he is. If you're hoping he can be something, that's the offense, that's the system, that's putting the track team around him. That's the blueprint for the Carolina Panthers if they are going to keep Bryce Young. If not, I'd love to see Bryce Young go to Miami and be kind of their insurance policy, their Tua insurance down the road. But a good win there for a Carolina Panthers team that had really had a rough go of it. All right, let's get to the second piece of news on the coaching front. We'll get to all these games. But I thought we should start here. We talked about Dennis Allen going. How about the Raiders? Rhett, the Raiders, they jettisoned Luke Gessie, the offensive coordinator, offensive line coach gone, quarterback coach gone. That is a lot to replace within a season. But the other side of it is you can't get worse. So, let's try something else.
Yeah. Look, I think there was a lot about, the way that the offense was constructed at the top that left, some things to be desired, right? I think there was a lot of talk about, the way in which, Luke Gessie utilized Justin Fields there in Chicago. Was it all Fields? Was it Gessie? Was it a combination of both? And he comes in a really tough spot, like where you've got two quarterbacks that, not sure would find, starting quarterback, jobs to lead a franchise anywhere else with Gardner Minshew and with Aiden O'Connell. And as much as, I love watching Gardner Minshew play, like that fit has not worked. He's had some flashes, certainly, where they've had some competent play there, but not on the whole enough to have winning football on a consistent basis. So, this was an unenviable situation, I feel like, offensively, really for anyone. Quarterback, coordinator, just feel like that roster on the offensive side had flaws. But here's one thing, Bucky. Here's what I'm doing as I'm stepping in, to the play caller role now for the Las Vegas Raiders. Priority 1, get Brock Bowers involved. Priority 2, get Brock Bowers involved. Priority 3, use Brock Bowers in some way, shape, or form to help ignite your run game. And then let's see where we go from there. Because I think the more you take the air out of the ball, the more you try to, shorten games, the more competitive you're going to be able to be in some of these games.
Yeah, and I think the frustration for the Raiders, now, I wouldn't have suggested like a midseason firing, not only of the coordinator, but the quarterback coach, the O-line coach, or whatever. That's a lot. That's a lot at one time. And I'll say this, like half a season, I don't know if it's enough time to do a full evaluation on whether somebody's a good play caller or not, but here we are. And so if you're the Raiders, the one thing that Antonio Pierce has talked about is they want to run the football, they want to play tough and physical, and it has to look right. They recognize and appreciate what they have in Brock Bowers. And so in order, Rhett, it would be, hey, it's the Brock Bowers show. And if it's not going to Brock Bowers, then it's going in the belly of a running back. And that's how we're going to operate. We're going to run it and run it and run it. And when we throw it, we're throwing to Brock Bowers. And then we're going to reset and do it all over again. Like that's what it has to be, because when you look at the players that they have, if we talk about players, not plays, Brock Bowers, and I would say maybe the other tight end, Micah Meyer, they're the two best players. So the ball has to go to them first and then figure out who else needs a touch. But it has to be about a tight end centric offense.
I don't know what the conversation was when the decisions were made, but after watching the tape this morning, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, all right, who in the room, coaches, want to raise their hand, thought it would be a good idea for Thayer Munford to be left alone with Trey Hendrickson? Any hands? And maybe those were the 3 hands that went up. I don't know, but that was, holy moly, that was painful. That was X-rated. Watching that matchup from that game. But they have offensive line issues. They have some receiver issues. But the elephant in the room is they've got a quarterback issue. And until they can kind of figure that out, they're never going to be a good offense. And I'm just watching some of those throws from that game and watching that tape. And I'm early on in the process of watching guys, but I've never seen, and Buck, you hit this quick and we'll move on, but I've never seen Shedeur Sanders throw a ball as bad as some of those throws in that game. I mean, I can tell you right now, point blank, he upgrades what they're working with in a big way.
In a major way. And that was always the entire risk when they made the move. One, the money that they gave Garner Minshew, who has been a journeyman player throughout his time in this league, to think that he was going to be something different as a starter for the Raiders is a little baffling. And then Aiden O'Connell, great story, loved what he was able to do to close it out, but he's not an upgrade. He's not a high-end quarterback prospect. And so they're kind of stuck. And so that's why it never made sense for them to let Josh Jacobs out the building. Like, if you have a running back, an elite running back can mask some of your flaws at quarterback. But because you let him walk and then you don't have an elite running back, you don't have an elite quarterback, it's hard to play good football in this league without a blue chip player at either position.
DJ, I'll agree with you.
Go ahead, Rhett.
I'll agree with you.
I've got a saucy nug in the holster. I've got a saucy nug in the holster, but you go ahead and then
just let it marinate a little bit, right? Just let that one get a little bit crispier right there in the fryer. So Shane Steichen did get the most out of Gardner Minshew last year, right? I mean, like they had that team within, a fourth down drop of going to the playoffs. And obviously it didn't work out. So like we've seen better Gardner Minshew. And so it does make you wonder again when he comes back to fit, comes back to playmaker, comes back to scheme, comes back to people around that just kind of help bring out the bad side of what we've seen from Gardner as well.
This is it's time for a saucy nug presented by Wendy's because I'm gonna hit you with one right here. You talked about it, Josh Jacobs, Buck. How about during the free agency last year? People are like, we got all these running backs, and it kind of shows all these guys are free agents with the value, and nobody wants these guys, even though they're high picks and good football players. Leading rusher in the NFL, Derrick Henry, was a free agent last year, signed for a reasonable deal. Number 2, Saquon Barkley goes to Philadelphia. He's having an unbelievable year. And number 3, Josh Jacobs. All 3 of those free agents last year, they're the best 3 running backs in the NFL through the halfway point of the season. So it worked out quite well for those teams making an investment, which is going to get me to the next game here. Because this is really kind of the game of the day was Detroit-Green Bay. And if you look at this game, I was thinking about this from Detroit standpoint, and they won this ball game 24-14, and I want to get to some other thoughts on it as well. But the first thing I was thinking of was the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles, who've been right there, right, chasing a championship right there, lost in a Super Bowl. They go out and get Saquon Barkley as that piece. The Detroit Lions, who are knocking on the door in the championship game last year, they invest a first-round pick in Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a big-time difference maker for their offense. And then you have San Francisco, and they're going to get McCaffrey back, and we saw what they look like with McCaffrey in their offense and the jolt that he gave them when he came via a trade, which was not cheap, and a contract that is not cheap. I just find it fascinating that these teams that have Good offensive coaches, respected offensive minds have decided, and teams that are Super Bowl caliber teams have decided to invest some resources in premier running backs, Buck.
Yeah, no, it's not a surprise to me. It's one of those things where we went through this phase where everyone was talking about the devaluation of a running back. You don't necessarily need one. And I think you need one. I think it's about finding the right fit for your offense based on the level of quarterback play that you have. And to me, whenever you have an MVP in Lamar Jackson, and then you back it up with a guy who's been a two-time rushing champ, it tells you all you need about how some teams view the importance of the position. And with Josh Jacobs having the success that he's having, to go with Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, who I saw real time. And let me say this, DJ, to see him do a backwards hurdle in real
where
time,
were you? I need to know. Tell me where you were on this when that happened.
We gotta hear about this.
I'm right across the sideline. So it's on the other side of the field, but I'm looking and I'm seeing it, and I'm like, did he just backwards jump over a defender? And so everyone, even on the Jaguar sideline, was like, ooh. And so it is one of the more remarkable things that I've ever seen, because that's not something that you can think out, plan, and say, oh, you know what I'm doing? I'm going to turn around. Oh, and when I get here, I'm just going to pop up. The instincts and the reaction that he has, man, but you know what I feel bad for? I feel bad for all these high school coaches around the country that
every kid here can do that.
Every high school is going to spin around and just jump up. And so many of them are going to have little timeouts because they're going to get hit in the little, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's not for everybody. That's not for everybody.
You know what I thought of when I saw that? I was like, I immediately thought Michael Jordan, right? The signature, that's on the signature imagery from, the Jumpman collection, and with the leg, like he did like the reverse Jordan. Like if that Jordan dunk had been from behind, jumping that way with the legs going up and over, like I've never seen someone with such incredible instinct have the athleticism to make that kind of play on the fly. Like, how does that even register in your muscle memory to just come out like, oh yeah, this is the best path to getting by this next guy? That just tells you what kind of special player that is.
Yeah, no doubt. I want to go circle back real quick though on Detroit Green Bay. If we had an in-season tournament like the NBA, Buck, I mean, would anybody not pick the Detroit Lions? I know the Chiefs are undefeated, but I mean, if we were going to say if the Super Bowl was tomorrow, as the teams are currently constructed and health-wise, I mean, everybody would pick the Lions.
I mean, you got to, because DJ, they're a team that can win any style, any way, any place. However you want to do it, they can do it. They can run it, they can throw it, they can play defense. They have an explosive offense. They want to play ball control. Jared Goff is effective. He's efficient. He is not putting the ball in harm's way. I mean, this is just a well-constructed team. And to just think about all the laughs and jokes that the Lions have endured throughout the years, and to look at them right now as the class of the league. They don't have any chips to go with it, but to think about how they played, the roster they played, everybody's talking about their culture, their team building methods. This team right now is kind of like the model of how you want to build your team going forward.
Yeah, I'm
happy for the
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Good. Yeah, I was just looking at this, like, thinking back to when my dad was with the Lions and going to some of those games, and as hard as it was, and as bad as it had gotten, that 2008 year before Matthew Stafford came, watching them toil and struggle through, a bottom of the barrel type of roster and just not hitting on top draft picks. And now seeing the way all of that is flipped has been so cool. And I think Jared Goff's renaissance here with Detroit is one of the best stories, I think the league has to offer over the course of the last couple of years. We talk about the success he's had, this year in terms of just not throwing in completions. I guess this is his fourth game of the season with an 80-plus completion percentage with a passing touchdown, tied for the most such games in a single season since 1950. Now, I went back and looked at all these throws. Like, this is not a dink and dunk throw type of offense. Like, he's pushing the ball down the field to Sam Laporta, 20 yards on an in cut. That throw to Amon-Ra St. Brown, that back shoulder down there in the red zone. These are not like low degree of difficulty throws that he's piling up here. Sure, there's some here and there, And then you think about it, you're like, yeah, they got a really good offensive line, but he still gets hit and pressured at a pretty good rate. Like they are not one of the top outfits in terms of limiting pressure on the quarterback and limiting hits on the quarterback. And just one more saucy nug here for you, by the way, which I discovered in kind of studying the Lions this way. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have only allowed Baker Mayfield to get touched 10 times this year. 7 sacks and
Wow.
3 hits. He has only been touched 10 times. Sorry, just a little bonus saucy nug. I'll let you finish though, DJ, what you got with the Lions.
That's really saucy.
Yeah, that is a good saucy nug. Look, I had a chance to bump into Brad Holmes and talk with him on the field. I was at the Michigan-Oregon game, and talking to him before that game, I said exactly what you guys were just talking about, which is, man, I have so much respect for how you built this team. Like this is a blueprint for how you build a football team at the line of scrimmage, both sides, an identity, a physicality. It travels well. It works in the postseason. He's just done a phenomenal job. And one of those players that I want to give him credit for is Kirby Joseph, who's got 6 picks now. I was going back through my notes on him in the 22 class, Senior Bowler, 5 interceptions his last year at Illinois, middle of field range, excellent anticipation, flashes some big hits. He does take some charges in the run game. Had a hamstring, no 40, so you don't have a 40 time on him, but 6'1", 203 pounds. But Buck, to put a bow on it, last thought, these guys that get their hands on the football, these quarterbacks that rack up sacks. We can talk about height, weight, speed, and length, and all that stuff. It's a production business, man. Like these guys that are ball magnets in college end up being ball magnets in the NFL.
Man, the production is everything. And so much of what we do as scouts, we talk about the measurables and those things, but we have to account for the production. It's hard to expect someone to do something that they've never done previously. So how can you expect someone to be a guy that is an interception king if they weren't getting a bunch of interceptions in college or in high school? There's something about that. And Kirby Joseph is a nice example. This dude is always around the ball, particularly whenever this dude plays the Green Bay Packers. He finds a way to make a play. Yeah. It's just something that is in his DNA. He does it year in, year out when he lines up against the green and gold.
Well, it's a big matchup in the Pacific Northwest with the Seattle Seahawks bringing in the Los Angeles Rams, and I'll bat lead off on this one. This is a game that the Rams won, big win for them, 26-20. It is all bunched up together there in the NFC West. Tough loss for the Seattle Seahawks, but my takeaway, and Buck, I'll get over to you on this, is this defensive line. Jared Verse, I tweeted out, like, this guy has a disdain for anyone who attempts to block him. Like, he plays so violent and so angry. And I know I guess the reason he slipped was because he was a little older in the draft. Didn't make sense to me for what I thought he was and for where he went. I thought they got tremendous value for the Rams, but he knows how to rush. Fisk has been just hell on wheels inside with what he's doing. And they've got all first, second-year players on this defensive front, and they're athletic. They're just nasty. Like, that's the biggest takeaway for me watching this group is there's a violence to their pass rush plan, which I absolutely love watching.
Yeah, no, they have a blueprint in terms of what they're looking for as a player and how it meshes with the scheme. And the Rams have done a really good job of drafting over the last couple of years, particularly when it comes to the middle to late stages of the draft. But then when you talk about Jared Verse and Brendan Fisk, like, they've been able to nail it at the top. And they have a clear picture of what they want. They put those guys in a position that is very similar to the way that they were asked to play in college. And you're seeing the same kind of production, the same kind of results. This is a hardened team, a team that is physical. And even though we don't expect them to be a team that is going to be in the postseason, they find their way out of a 1-4 start to be right back in the conversation as one of the top teams in that division.
And then on the flip side, by the way, I love what they're doing. That is a tough group there with LA, man. Like, that is a gritty group. I love what that defense is doing with Krishula, and like, they've grown this season, kind of grown together. First year coordinator, bunch of young players. Love that that's all kind of moving together in the right direction now. But I looked at Seattle here. I looked at Jackson Smith and Jigba in particular, who I think, could be now, is going to be at some point best slot player in the league with his explosiveness and ability to make game-changing plays. But there was a 2-play sequence early in the game here for the Seahawks that has kind of been a microcosm of this game and of their season. So it was a second 31. Great play design from Ryan Grubb, okay? You got Jackson Smith and Jigba in motion, back and forth across the formation. DB McCullough ends up following him the whole way. And once he settles in on the tight end side, the tight end widens off the ball immediately, which grabs McCullough. So there's like a switch off, right? And so then you've got JSN working on Roseboom, the linebacker. JSN also widens, is starting to run and set up a screen, right? So you set up a wide receiver screen. They get a couple of blockers in front. Because JSN and widen gives great leverage to get the block from the offensive lineman on Roseboom. And then he turns into a running back. The other two offensive linemen working on the screen totally whiff, don't block a soul. And you've got JSN who breaks 3 tackles on his way to a 20-yard gain, including Kobe Turner, the defensive tackle, who JSN is able to shake off and continue running. Like, it shows his ability to kind of get open and then make plays with the ball in his hand. But then on the very next play, he's open in the middle of the field on 3rd and 9 and is coming back towards the quarterback. Geno fires one to him, and he goes up with it like this to try to catch it, as opposed to like this. And ball bounces out of his hands and right into the hands of McCullough for one of his 2 interceptions on the day. And it's like, you go from making a great play and just don't quite put it all together on the next one, which kind of, again, encapsulates the day for Seattle. Geno throws 2 red zone interceptions. They have every opportunity to win the game and can't get it done.
Yeah, and let's before we move on to the next game here, let's give Cam Kitchens some love as well. Think about all the rookies on the back end. 2 picks for Cam Kitchens coming out of Miami. A good value pick there for Les Snead, who's just he's done a phenomenal job of finding these young defensive players over the last couple years. Give him his love there, give him his flowers. You see the pick 6 there. You get 2 picks, 103 yards on the return, including the touchdown. Not a bad day there for Cam Kitchens, so give him some love. Buck, you touched on the run, but how about the rest of that? Ooh, golly, man, this weather's changing here. Sorry, I tried to sneak that question out before that sneeze came, but I couldn't get it all the way there.
Do it.
It was a good effort. Buck, you talked about the Saquon. You talked about the Saquon run. What about the rest of the game? Give me something else from that game.
Okay, so I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this as respectful as I can to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles have a roster that is Super Bowl caliber. I worry if their coach can get them over the threshold. The game that I watched yesterday, the Philadelphia Eagles should have mollywopped the Jacksonville Jaguars based on the way they had control of the game. Yet through coaching gaffes and miscues and errors, they allowed the Jacksonville Jaguars to hang in the game and almost win the game because Nick Sirianni does not like taking points when points are available. He doesn't like field goals. He doesn't like extra points. He doesn't like the gimmies that are there. And in a game where you feel very early that you have control over the other team, all he needed to do was stack points, and the Jacksonville Jaguars would not have been able to close the gap, nor made the game competitive. But because he won't play by, I would say, conventional rules, he makes every game more difficult for the Eagles than it needs to be. What I worry about is not that the Eagles won't get to the postseason, but I worry about a team that has the potential to be able to be a Super Bowl team will not accomplish those goals because their head coach will get in the way with his decision making.
Yeah, I think again
Sorry,
you saw
I was a little harsh. Sorry.
No.
Let it sink
That's
in.
been something that's been said a lot. A lot of people have had that. I haven't had a chance to. I've seen the tape of the game, but I haven't seen when you're not watching the TV copy, you don't get the context of the decisions that are taking place.
That's true. And, I think, again, this offense slowed down a little bit as A.J. Brown went out. Just as we talked about last week, they really found rhythm again when he was back in the lineup. And then he goes down and, he kind of becomes, thankfully they had Devontae Smith make one of the most incredible. I mean, the Eagles made 2 of the most incredible plays offensively we've seen all season in this game with the Saquon run and then that Devontae Smith catch at the end was so powerful. But, the A.J. Brown absence and how long he's going to be out again, I think, is something that you got to watch for long-term viability of offensive success here for Philly.
Yeah, I would just say a couple things. Number one, there's a run. I watched all Saquon's explosives, which are incredible, watching him run the ball. But Devontae Smith's in there digging out second-level defenders in the run game. So that's a good sign for kind of the culture of your offense that you've got your receivers doing that type of dirty work and not the biggest receiver in the world and Devontae Smith. So that was good to see. And Josh Sweat had a good game, couple sacks. He rushed well. And if we were going to go through Buck and if we assume there's such thing as a roster realtor, should we put a for sale sign on the roster of the Jags right now and say, come on, bring best and final offers here for some of these guys?
I just don't know what you would sell off. I don't know who you would sell off because the guys that you would sell off are already either gone or they're hurt. Cam Robinson was traded away. Christian Kirk is hurt. Like I don't know who you would go and get. I would say the thing that will hurt the Jacksonville Jaguars when they go back and they look at this season, it would just be a season of lost opportunities. 5 games where you've lost by 5 points or fewer, games in which you've had the ball in the hands of your best player, Trevor Lawrence, and the ball has not gone the way that it's supposed to go in terms of like getting the ball to the right playmaker, making the play that you want to see. We just haven't seen those things from him, and it's not from like a failure of trying, just hasn't been able to execute in those moments. And you would like to see that from your franchise quarterback, but it's not just him. It's a defense that gave up 2 touchdowns on 3rd and forever situations. Saquon Barkley scores on a 3rd and 19 on a run, and then the catch that we saw Devontae Smith make a great catch, that was another 3rd and 17 situation where they let the ball go over the top. It's just a combination of everything. Like it's players, it's coaching, it's execution, it's everybody. And so everybody takes a hand in it when your team is 2-7.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point there with the Jags. We'll see what happens here as the deadline is less than 24 hours away here. Let's get through a couple more games here quickly. Miami, Buffalo. I watched Tua, Rhett, and I thought he looked like Tua. I didn't see any rust with him coming back. 27 points. It looks completely different, over the last few weeks with him back in the lineup. So I was honed in on that one. I want to say, okay, he's going up against Buffalo. He's playing really, really well. Can Tua make a difference? And I thought he did. And they're right there to the end and took a ridiculous field goal to beat him.
I agree. The 60-yarder there from Bass after he had missed a little bit in that game, I think was important. But again, I think it comes down to me, like they are so much more effective in the run game, right, with Tua Tagovailoa, which makes you think, DJ, about Bucky, about all that goes through Tua in this. Like it's not just trying to activate Tyreek Hill explosively down the field or Jalen Waddle down the field. Like that's not the only impact that Tua has on this offense. It's the way in which they can operate the run game with him in there as well, with the his ability to be cerebral in this Mike McDaniel system. So I think you're going to see some good ball here from the Miami Dolphins down the stretch, and maybe they end up making a run at this thing in a wild card race because the Buffalo Bills are winning this thing, and the AFC East going away right now with a 4-game lead.
I mean, they are, and I'll say this with the Buffalo Bills. When I look at the Buffalo Bills, and this last game was an exception to the rule, they have been pounding people to sleep in terms of like beating them by significant margins. This game was much tighter than we expected, but the Bills keep winning. And you look up, and the Bills are 7-2, and they are a team that has a superhero quarterback. They play really good defense, and they're running the football. And those things are a recipe that you need to make a deep run in the postseason. It might not get them there, but depending on the superhero powers of Josh Allen, it might be able to do it. This is a team that subtracted some of their pieces in the offseason, and they're a much better team because of it. Addition by subtraction has worked for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I know you said you got to take it one game at a time. But if I'm in the Buffalo Bills personnel department, we're already breaking down Kansas City, Baltimore. Let's start worrying about the teams we're going to have to deal with in the postseason. Pittsburgh, whoever else wants to come to that party. But let's start doing some of that work because you are going to roll through your division and be a playoff team. All right, it's time for Cruising to Victory presented by Royal Caribbean, and this is a game with the Baltimore Ravens, the Denver Broncos. The Baltimore Ravens defense is not what it's been the last few years, but some encouraging signs in this one, holding Bo Nix and that Denver offense to 10 points. And offensively for the Baltimore Ravens, Buck, not a surprise, usual suspects here. Lamar Jackson, outstanding. Zay Flowers continues to have an impressive sophomore campaign as well.
Yeah, no, this is something that gets you right. So Derrick Henry goes over 1,000 yards. We're looking at the combination of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. They can run the ball. They can do whatever they want to do in the run game. whether it's straight traditional downhill runs, whether it's read option stuff with Lamar Jackson pulling, they can do all of that. Now they've assembled a cast on the outside that makes you pay for trying to overcommit to the run. We talk about Zay Flowers and what he is able to do. We can talk about what Deontay Johnson will give them, Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. Offensively, this team is a juggernaut that no one wants to face. It's the defense that will determine how far this team goes in the postseason.
Yeah, and they were better certainly this week than they've been previously. You know, they've been giving up some points, you know, for sure, comparatively speaking to what we've expected from them over the course of the last couple of years. But like, I couldn't watch this game and not just be enamored with the juice that Zay Flowers gives this team. Like his explosiveness and like as fast as he looks on the field, it's like he's in a different league with the ball in his hands. It's been really, really kind of special to see, because there was a time like early on in the year, you know, wasn't getting as much targets his way. You know, Rashad Bateman has become a bigger piece of the offense. Isaiah Likely was really getting a ton of targets early on, but Zay has really kind of come on here as of late, and I'm fired up to see what he's going to bring to this thing as the Ravens really make this playoff push here.
I'll tell you what, we are only a few weeks away, guys, from the Har Bowl. It is around Thanksgiving time. I believe it's a Monday nighter at SoFi. They both teams playing well right now. I'm looking forward to that one. That is going to be a big time clash as the Baltimore Ravens with a big win over the Denver Broncos, 41-10. It's time for our Salute to Service presented by USAA. To show appreciation for our military members, USAA and the Dallas Cowboys provided a once-in-a-lifetime experience to U.S. Navy Petty Officer Second Class Dusty Brubaker, who had the opportunity to face off against Cowboys All-Pro linebacker Micah Parsons in a game of Madden on the big screen at AT&T Stadium. Through the Salute to Service program, USAA and the NFL pay tribute to all the current and former military. All right, this is a game that I would say maybe before the season started we'd think we'd be talking about right at the very top of the broadcast. You'd have the Dallas Cowboys coming off all these 12-win seasons, all the excitement brewing. You've got Kirk Cousins and Atlanta, a team that was just a quarterback away. And here we are in a game the Falcons won, where the Falcons are still kind of what we hoped they would be, and the Dallas Cowboys, they're a wreck. They're absolutely a wreck, and now have an injured quarterback.
Yeah, and now sounds like he's going to miss multiple weeks. So just kind of, I mean, this feels like the thing that's going to make the pot boil over for Dallas. Like, you could sense the frustration building to a fever pitch, you know, in this game. I mean, Mike McCarthy went, you know, absolutely haywire on a Surface tablet on the sideline. You got CeeDee Lamb's banged up, you know, and a couple of times, but stays in the game, tries to make it a game late. I mean, there's just too many times, really, on both sides of the ball, especially on defense, though, in this game, where you just felt like they didn't know exactly what they were supposed to be doing, what they wanted to be doing. On a couple of those plays where the Falcons got to the edge, especially late, and it was that one with Trayvon Diggs kind of trailing the play. Looks like he's talking back and forth. You know, I get it. Like, there's some wrinkles teams are going to throw in at you each and every week that are going to make you kind of have to sift through the mess to figure things out, but man, overall, this just feels like a team that's disjointed in a lot of different ways. Obviously, the run game is still an issue. Obviously, there's still a deficiency, you know, in the interior stopping the run on the defensive side of the ball. This just kind of more and more feels like a lost season here in Dallas, especially now with the Dak news.
I was gonna try and be positive on the Cowboys. I'm like, you know what? Obviously didn't see the game on TV doing the Charger game, but I'm gonna look at this box score. I'm gonna find a positive nugget in there, and then not a saucy nugget, just a positive nug. And then I'm gonna go watch that portion of the game, watch a cut up, and I'm gonna bring some positivity. So I looked at it and said, man, the Cowboys actually ran the ball okay in this game. Yeah. I've been very critical about their run game and the lack of investment back. So let's watch these runs. What do I see in the runs? I see, well, the first two that popped were actually swing passes that were behind the line of scrimmage that get cast and labeled as runs. Then it was a Dak Prescott scramble. Then it was a CeeDee Lamb jet sweep. So I'm like, nope, they still have no traditional run game. So I tried, Cowboy fans, to be positive. I was looking for positivity, and even that did not work. But a good win for the Atlanta Falcons. Let's get on to the next game here. It was the night game, Sunday nighter, Indy and Minnesota. Anything jump out to you in that one, Rhett?
Well, the Minnesota Vikings defense is back to being disruptive, I think is one of the biggest things you can say. I mean, like Joe Flacco made the Colts offense competent, right? When he was in there for those couple of games while Anthony Richardson was hurt, he comes back in and man, they struggled. They struggled up front, dealing with the rush. Jonathan Grenard, couple of sacks. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, a quarterback center exchange. I don't even know if you could put that on the quarterback, DJ. You could probably be the expert on that one there. It just looked like Jonathan Taylor just kind of let that one go. And this is obviously a throw you can't have. Look at Josh Downs' frustration after that. I just think everything went wrong for this offense, and they found zero rhythm. And there was a lot that Minnesota is throwing at you on any given play in any given series. And then when you've got elite pass rushers like they do and Jonathan Grenard and company, get Dallas Turner involved a little bit there too, their first-round draft pick. And, man, you're really difficult to deal with back there.
I was thinking of this connection, kind of a random connection with Sam Darnold, and I was thinking of, okay, look, he's very accurate, from that standpoint in this ball game, has a bunch of touchdowns, but then also has the turnovers that go along with it. And I thought, this kind of reminds me of like young Matthew Stafford, like when Stafford in those early years with Detroit, where you'd see games like this one, and maybe win, maybe lose. But you're like, man, he's so accurate. He's got excellent arm talent. He's a good athlete. He can make big time throws. But there's just a couple you'd like to have back. And I thought, okay, well, Sam, has been in the league for a while. Stafford, I'm comparing him to a young Stafford. But really, if we look at just Sam being around competency in terms of everything around him, play caller, the players, the whole setup, the organization, all those things, that we should grade Sam as a young starter. We shouldn't grade him as this veteran who's, on his third team now. It should be more of, hey, there's a lot of good to take out of what Sam Darnold's doing every week.
That's a great point. And I mean, if you're really just counting the seasons for the teams that he's actually just started for, this is kind of like the rookie year, right? In terms of if you want to judge on competency, right? On players around him, on playmakers around him, on having the whole foundation when we talk about with the 3 Ps. I don't think you can say that with the Jets. I certainly don't think you could have said that with his time with the Carolina Panthers. And then now, he didn't really play at all with the San Francisco 49ers. So you kind of throw that out there. And this is the most consistent time period in which he's had that kind of support system around him. So we're still just looking, at 8 games here, and how he's performed in those 8 games has been pretty dang good.
Yeah, no question. All positive for me as well on what Sam Darnold is doing, and the Vikings sitting there at 6-2. Next game, as we rip through them here, Chicago and Arizona. Chicago, man, there's a lot of negativity coming out after that game. Caleb has not played well a couple weeks in a row. If we were going to spin it to the positive side of things, I mean, I was there in Arizona just a few weeks ago, and this team, there was, I would say, angst in the building, a little bit of like, oh man, what is this year going to look like, and who are we, what are we, searching for your identity. And now all of a sudden you look up and the Cardinals are 5-4, sitting right at the top of the division, feeling really good about things.
Yeah, and one of the things that I didn't necessarily have on the old bingo card was the presence of a 3-headed monster at running back that's starting to come to fruition here. Obviously, Trey Benson, we expected, as the first running back off the board to be one of those guys to contribute. He's been really kind of slow to find his role, but it got some flashes now, in addition to what James Conner is already giving you as that physical kind of workhorse back. And then they get like the little spark plug in Amari DeMercado every now and then, who rips off the end of half touchdown. And again, I guess, credit to Matt Eberflus for taking the blame on that. Said he was calling a pass pressure, didn't expect the run, and had his defense in a bad spot. But talking about 2 weeks in a row now where that Chicago Bears defense has given up an end of half or end of game touchdown on, something where they should just be going to the half, going to the break, with no harm, no foul. And again, it's a big time momentum shift, and you can almost sense it. For that team, you're like, you were going into the half as, oh, is it this again? Here we go again, that sort of thing. And, I'm sure you've seen the DJ Moore play that everyone's talking about on social media now.
Yeah.
A couple of things on that, right? You'd like to stay in bounds, right? You like to not just run out of bounds on a scramble play.
Prefer to have all 11 guys on the field. Preferred. Yeah.
I mean, yes, he does, in fact, finish. The play is still happening, and he is already sitting down on the bench, which is never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
But 2 things. He did kind of look like he got a little nicked up on the play. Like he kind of went down.
He rolled his ankle.
Yeah, rolled his ankle a little bit. Yeah. Plus, he was out of bounds and could not have rejoined the play effectively right? Once you're already out of bounds, you can't come back and be the first guy in unless you totally reestablish, right?
But real quick on that, let me put a bow on that. The only thing is, yes, could he touch the ball? No, he'd be the first to touch the ball. But if I'm a defensive back and there's another human being with another team's jersey on, standing on the field, I have to cover him. Like that's just now. I'm not gonna. Did he step on the line? Is he out of bounds? I don't know. But I have to account for him. That's at least one defender that you take away just by merely standing. Even if you were sitting on the field, within the field to play, you would have a defender out. I have yet to see a defender who will go sit next to somebody on the bench. That's not going to happen. They are not going to respect you as a target
stay alive.
when you're sitting on the bench. So that's where that's it on that one. And I've been critical of DJ Moore in the Houston game. I thought his body language was terrible in that game earlier this year. I didn't like the way he showed up as quarterback. So this is not something that's new, and I think that's probably why it's a bigger deal. Ho hum, Jaden Daniels, just another consistent performance for Washington as they take care of the New York Giants, 15-22, a couple touchdowns. It's just the game seems slow. I don't know how else to say it. That's my takeaway there.
I wouldn't disagree. I mean, it just everything comes to him very naturally. Like, in this throw, I love that Terry McLaurin again is a big piece of this offense. I felt like he's disappeared for the last couple of years. Probably not all of his doing, with some of the quarterback inconsistencies that they've had there. They do this without Brian Robinson too. You're able to sit him and get him an extra week to kind of continue to get healthy. Because that run game, has been a big piece of it too, and not just Daniels on the ground, but having that physical presence with Brian Robinson, and then being able to take care of business without it. Defensively, I think they're playing well. This has just become, you want to talk about organizational shifts. Like this is the biggest turnaround that we've seen in the NFL from top to bottom. Right, ownership change. Personnel change, right? Adam Peters has come in and done a phenomenal job, better than I think we even thought, coming out of the draft. We're like, oh, man, this offensive line's still going to be a little, but they figured out a way to get some good play out of that group. Dan Quinn has done a phenomenal job at the head coaching spot. Like just all around, top to bottom, this has become a well-run organization.
New England, Tennessee.
Look, I mean, the play that Drake made to send that thing to overtime is what, again, gives you hope and optimism moving forward. But then you still get the realization that this is a player that's still got a long way to go, right? With the unfortunate decision he makes to throw the interception, following that. So I think, again, I come away still feeling encouraged with what the Patriots can find with Drake May. There's still a lot more work to be done. To continue to bolster that roster around him, especially those guys in front of him. The New England Patriots quarterbacks are one of the most frequently hit and pressured in the league. And obviously the guys in front are a big piece of that. Getting the ball out is another piece too that we can get into. But overall, congratulations to the Titans for finding a way to win a game. But I think both these franchises still have a long way to go.
I will say, talking about Drake May in New England, if this was, a mile, which is 4 trips around the track, I would say Drake May is a lot closer to getting to the finish line than the New England Patriots supporting group is to getting to the finish line. They need to catch up on the lead lap.
I think he is.
I think he is far exceeding what's around him. Whereas a lot of times you're like, okay, we got a lot of pieces in here, and it's just we got to be patient with the quarterback so he can catch up to the team. Forget that, New England, the rest of the team's got to catch up to him. I think his development is off to a really strong start. He had 2 scrambles, 3rd and 16, 3rd and 6 that he converted, over 90 yards rushing. I mean, he was excellent with his legs, making plays and made some big time throws. And you're going to have to live with some of the rookie mistakes that come along with that. But I think he's ahead of schedule. I think the rest of the group around him is behind schedule. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. Jeffrey Simmons, by the way, I'm excited to see him in person again next week. He's one of my favorite players to watch. He was awesome in this game. I think he had 9 pressures. All right, let's get to the game I was at, which is the Chargers and the Browns. First thought on that one, gosh, as someone who calls the games, I hope the Chargers can hold on to Jesse Minter as long as they can. I don't know if they're going to be able to. He is a good football coach. And people keep asking me, like, this is the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. What is it about it? Why is it so great? And I'm like, well, it's pretty simple. They don't bust coverages, and they don't miss tackles, and they play hard. And That's kind of it. They're playing with 2 fifth-round rookie corners. Tarheeb still had an interception and a tip that led to another interception. Cam Hart is playing great on the other side. These guys have been forced into action due to injuries. Tuli Pelotu, is a young player. He had I think 2.5 sacks in this game. He was excellent. The defense is very well coached and is a good unit. And then offensively, Rhett, we've talked about who's going to kind of emerge as Herbert's guy, all these new pieces. Quentin Johnston, year 2, don't give up on him. He has a 100-yard game, big 66-yard touchdown on a blown coverage by Denzel Ward. And then McConkey is just getting better and better every week. And I tried to find another comp for him because I know what the criticism is coming with it. He looks just like Julian Edelman. I don't know how to not say it. I can't unsee it when I see him out there, just how quick he is. And his transition once he catches the ball to get up the field, something that Edelman was so good at. And Herbert's got a lot of confidence in that young dude.
Just not quite as thick as Edelman was, right? Like that's the only, like just in terms of body frame.
When you stand next to him, he's not tiny. He's not like a little.
No, I agree with
kid.
you on that. Yeah. But Edelman was so compact, and I mean, yeah, I think that's a great comp. I mean, the way that he works in some of those those option routes, finding spots to get open. I think Ladd McConkey is going to be a terrific player, certainly in this league. And then, to go back to your point on Jesse Mentor, I remember meeting him, at the Rose Bowl last year and just talking to him about his defense, and just had such a clarity of thought, right, and a clarity of how he wanted his guys to execute. Like there was just such a confidence in the scheme, and they're so well coached, right? And he's got wrinkles, sure, but I mean, you nailed it, right? They know where they're supposed to be, and they make the plays that are there for them to make. And that's, I guess, more than half the battle at this point. You don't miss a ton of tackles.
There's no chaos.
The other thing
There's
is,
no guys running on and off the field. There's no, I didn't get the call. Like it's just very calm, and I think that's a coaching thing.
I also feel like with the Chargers that this was a defense we talked about a lot. DJ is having star power, right? With Joey Bosa, with Khalil Mack, with Derwin James, and now it's like they're more valuable as a sum of all the parts than just star power here and star power there, and I think that says a lot too.
Yep, playing as one, no question. All right, this was a fun episode today. Covered a lot of ground. Had some shake-up there in the coaching department. Glad we got to hit on that, as well as cover a bunch of these games. We'll be back tomorrow. Rookie draft coming your way. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.
Draft.
Go.